What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is your boy Frankie Bones, and in today's video we are going to be breaking down the CDL Major Tournament 2, which will be going on this weekend starting on Thursday. This tournament will be held in Boston at the MGM Music Hall just outside of Fenway, so it should be a really awesome time. Really looking forward to this event. It'll be the first event that the Boston Breach have hosted. So wishing them all of the best. We have a great weekend ahead of us. So why don't we just go ahead and get right into it. The first thing that I'm pulling up here on screen for you guys is a picture of the bracket for the Major 2 tournament. This is as a result of the Major 2 qualifying matches over the past 3 weeks. So as you can see up top, we have the winners bracket, which consists of 8 teams. And we have the bottom bracket, which is the elimination or losers bracket. So anybody who loses in the elimination bracket, obviously goes without saying, will be eliminated. So that's sort of the format for this tournament. I will go through and talk about each matches as they correspond to each day. And at the end, we'll go through and I'll show you guys a picture of the graphic that I filled out on Call of Duty League on their website, just to show you guys that I did lock this in and give you guys a better picture visually, maybe if it helped you guys remember a little bit better. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the first matchup of the weekend. All of Thursday will be winners round 1 matchups. For each day throughout the weekend, the matches will start at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which is a nice little change of pace from the matches starting at 3 o'clock. Sort of depends on where the tournaments are being hosted, but being on the East Coast, pretty nice to see these times being a little bit earlier. Can understand on the West Coast being a little bit tough, but, you know, East Coast is the best. So, without further ado, we will get into this. Starting off on Thursday at 1:30, we have the NYSL going up against the Minnesota Rocker. Going to keep these pretty brief as we have a lot of matches to go through. NYSL is up 1-0 in the season series. I'm going to take NYSL 3-1. Think it's just too much. Rocker played well toward the end of the stage of the Major 2 qualifiers, but I think I really just have to go with NYSL here. Think that their team's been playing really well. Subs are just too dynamic, and Rocker may be able to take one. Again, like I said, they've been playing well. Afro's been frying. Dylan attached as well. Benjamin Bance. All playing pretty well, but I'll take NYSL 3-1 in this matchup. Moving on to the second match of the day. This match will be around 3 p.m. Eastern. We have the Boston Breach, the hometown team, going up against the Atlanta FaZe. Boston does have a 1-0 series lead over the Atlanta FaZe. However, this was during the first major qualifier weekend. It was actually the first match of the entire season, so we'll kind of throw that out the window, but I have Atlanta FaZe taking this one 3-0. You know, I understand that Boston Breach has been playing really well. Gig Awake is on the break, and he's, you know, on the verge of coming out. You know, Awakening is an incredible player, but just think that FaZe is going to be able to take care of business here and get their Major 2 tournament off to a great start. Played well this stage, some hairy games. Obviously, their last match, they were reverse swept by the boys of Optic, so we'll see how they're able to bounce back, and I imagine they're going to do so in a pretty good fashion. Moving on to the third matchup of the Thursday slate, we have the Toronto Ultra going up against the Los Angeles Guerrillas. Now, this one could be pretty interesting. Toronto is up 1-0 on the season series. This past weekend, we saw Toronto knock off LAG. There is a fair amount of trash talk between Scrappy and Joe Deceives, who is a rookie in the league and was on the academy team. If a lot of people don't know his story, he sort of came from playing ranked in Call of Duty Vanguard last year. He was absolutely frying people. He was playing with guys like Doug Sensor Martin and, people like Scrappy and some other people that have sort of grinded to get their way into the league. May think that he's, not as talented and that he really didn't deserve his spot. So a little bit of flair going on there. I'll take Toronto in a 3-2 fashion here. LAG has looked really good in the respawns. I think their search is still coming along. Obviously, they're a new team. But I think if there's just a lot of firepower going on with Toronto, I think that starting off the Major 2 qualifiers with a 4-1 record, I think they're going to keep the momentum rolling. I think that they're going to be able to take down the Gorillas. Not sure if it'll be the closest series. Obviously, it's a 3-2. But within each map, I'm not sure exactly how it'll play out. But I'll take Toronto here. It might be a little sketch, but I'll take them 3-2. And finally, wrapping up Thursday, we have Optic, Texas going up against the Los Angeles Thieves. Now, Los Angeles Thieves has a 1-0 series record against Optic, Texas, but this was in Stage 1, so again, we can throw it out the window. No Scump, completely new team. If you've been watching over the past few years, Los Angeles Thieves always sort of seems to play really well against Optic, so I have Optic taking this 3-2. I like the changes, behind the scenes that have been going on with Optic. Obviously, a lot of it is a little bit cloudy in terms of what was going on, but, we see it now. Dashy is absolutely frying. I think the guys' timing are really coming together. I think that the loss against the Las Vegas Legion was a little bit of a fluke. I'm just not sure really what happened, and I wasn't watching that series live, so it honestly just doesn't even count. So I'll take Optic 3-2. LAT always does show up, but I think they have some bigger problems to address, and I'm not sure that they're going to be able to get this one done against an Optic team that's firing on seemingly all cylinders. Moving on to our matches we have on Friday. We're going to have 5 matches on Friday and Saturday. So buckle up, going to be a long, great day of Call of Duty. But the first matchup we have, this will be the first losers round 1 matchup. This will be between the Minnesota Rocker and the London Royal Ravens. The Minnesota Rocker have a 1-0 season series lead over the London Royal Ravens. This happened during the Major 2 qualifiers in the first week, and I'm just going to give this one to Minnesota 3-1. I think London still has a long ways to go. I think that ultimately they still need to make a change. I don't really think that Paul X is sort of filling the role that they need him to fill. I think they still need more slang. I think that a move needs to be made. They did look, okay towards the end of the qualifying for Major 2, but, out of good faith, I really just can't give this one to the Ravens. I'll give this one to Minnesota 3-1. Moving on to our next matchup of the day, also a losers round 1 matchup. We have the Boston Breach going up against the Seattle Surge. Now, in this matchup, Boston is up in the season series 1-0. However, this was stage 1, so again, we can sort of toss it out the window. This Surge team has really been struggling to sort of find their identity and find their footing. While they did look a little bit better towards the end of the Major 2 qualifying period, I think that this could be a series where Boston really rides the home crowd. I have Boston taking this one in a 3-2 fashion. Again, sort of like what I was saying, I think Gigawake may show up in this game. I think Zinni's been playing really well, and ultimately with Nero and Vivid, it's honestly just an issue of whether their timing is clicking, whether they're frying or dying. I think that they may end up frying in this series. I think that the inconsistencies of Mac and Lamar just make it really just difficult to bet on this Surge team to really advance. And I think this team really may need to look at making a change. As Aches was saying, over the offseason, they missed out on their chance to pack a punch. They missed out on their chance to trade Pred to Optic, which seemingly looks like his spot is gone, at least for the time being. So I think that this might be the wake-up call that Surge needs, so I'll give this one to Boston in a 3-2 fashion. Moving on to our third matchup of the day. Again, another losers round 1 matchup. We have the Los Angeles Thieves going up against the Florida Mutineers. Now, this season series is split 1-1. We have both teams obviously picking up a win. We have the Los Angeles Thieves picking up 1 win at the Major 1 tournament, and Florida getting their win during the Major 1 qualifiers. We'll kind of throw both of these out. I mean, obviously, since this point, LAT has looked very different than they were back then. Florida now has made the change to add in Dave Patty for Brack. I'm still just really not sure what this Florida team is trying to accomplish. Dave did look all right in his first weekend of series, but don't really think that they're going to get a chance to play Optic, so, obviously they're not going to get a win. I'll give this one to LAT 3-1. Moving on to our last and final losers round 1 matchup, we have the Los Angeles Guerrillas going up against the Las Vegas Legion. These teams have actually yet to play each other on the young season, so sort of interesting to see how it'll play out with map bans, vetoes, and picks, but I think I just have to give this one to LAG 3-0. I think something really needs to go on with Vegas. I think that internally they're having some troubles. They're not all playing together. This will be the first time they're playing together. They did make a run. The last time they're playing together since the Major 1 tournament. I just don't think that they're going to be able to repeat that. I think LAG has been really, really good in the respawns. I think that there's this armor of Vegas that they sort of appeared to have had is sort of cracked, and I think a change or something needs to happen. Honestly, I don't even know what it is, because online they just can't get a win. And that obviously just sets them up for losers in the major tournaments, so I'm not sure what will happen. We'll keep it short and sweet. LAG 3-0. And finally, to wrap up our Friday, we have a losers round 2 matchup between the Los Angeles Thieves and the Minnesota Rocker. Now, this should be a pretty interesting series. These teams have not played each other yet, but I'm going to give this one to Minnesota in a 3-2 fashion. I think the Los Angeles Thieves are looking a little inconsistent. I'm not sure if it's a slow learning team. They sort of had this issue at the beginning of Call of Duty Vanguard last season, sort of struggling to find an identity. They started off hot, went really cold, and they were able to sort of rekindle what was going on, move Kenny to the sub. Obviously, we can't do that because Kenny's already on the sub, but I think that Minnesota has a sort of toughness to their team. They have some pretty good vets, some great leaders. I think that if Benjamin Bance is able to keep up that performance, I think he's sort of the X factor on this team. I think that Afro's been playing really well. He'll be able to match the pacing, that of Envoy. And I think guys like Don't Attach are really going to have to show up here. I think it's going to be an absolute battle, but I'll take Minnesota in the 3-2. Alright guys, so to kick us off on Saturday, we do actually have a mix of losers and winners round matches on Saturday, and obviously on Sunday as well. But this is where stuff starts getting interesting. You've made the weekend, it's time to buckle down and, push your way to a great placing, get yourself some points, and obviously get yourself a little bit of cash as well. So for the first matchup, again, starting at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, we have the Los Angeles Guerrillas going up against the Boston Breach. Now, this is where I think the run for the Boston Breach ends. I think that they have played well. I think that the inconsistencies will factor in. I think that LAG in this tournament will run pretty hot on some sort of high. It's a lot of these guys, or 2 of these guys, first LAN event as a professional player. So that would be Exceed and Joe Deceives. But at the same time, they have the leadership from Alec Arcides as well as Adam Assault. Both of those guys are world champions, so I think they'll bring that experience. I think they'll be able to help channel the energy. I just think that at some point Boston's going to sort of fizzle out. Their team, again, just being so inconsistent. LAG obviously still has to prove themselves, but just sort of have a feeling this is where Boston's run ends. Not sure really how much further in the tournament they possibly could go. They could maybe end up getting a top 6, but I think top 8 is sort of where they feel like they are as a team right now, so I'm going to send them out in a 3-1 fashion. I'll take the Los Angeles Guerrillas. Moving on to our second matchup of the day, this is a winners round 2 matchup. We have the Toronto Ultra going up against the Atlanta FaZe. Now, this is where series start to become bangers, sort of the rest of the way through. Incredibly excited about the way that I sort of have this drawn up, and maybe it's just, what I'm hoping will happen, but in this series, it's 1-1. Both teams have won a series against each other. Toronto ended up winning their match during the Major 1 qualifying cycle, while the Atlanta FaZe, were able to get the edge in the Major 1 tournament. And I've been going back and forth on this one, but I think that I'm going to give this one to Toronto in a 3-2 fashion. I think that the emotion of a guy like Scrappy is going to be able to charge up this team. They matched up really well against each other both times that they've played. And sort of as a look ahead, we may see them play sometime again later this weekend. But I like Toronto taking this one 3-2. Next on the slate, we have another winners round 2 matchup between Optic Texas and the New York Subliners. These teams have yet to play each other on the young season, which honestly I think may play into the hands of Optic Texas. Now, they've been together for the past 2 weeks. They've played 4 matches together, and one of those obviously being Las Vegas Legion was sort of a weird matchup, but I think that in a lot of ways that may have been trying to test some maps, their comfortability together, and I think that they're just going to be able to beat NYSL. Obviously, being a stan of the Green Wall, I'm going to want my boys to win, but I think ultimately it's going to be a really mixy series. I think that in terms of their subs, they both have great, very fast-paced duos between Shotzi and Hook, as well as 99 Kiz, the Bulldog, and Hydra, who's looking like the best player in the game, like I was mentioning in my last video. But I'm just not sure if they're going to have an answer for Dashi, honestly. He absolutely fried the Atlanta FaZe in the last series. I think that they're really developing a good team identity. They're looking really strong in Search and Destroy. They've always looked really strong in the respawn. So, out on a whim, I'll take Optic Texas in a 3-2 fashion. Moving on now to our losers round 3 match. We have the Atlanta FaZe going up against the Minnesota Rocker. Now, very interestingly, Minnesota Rocker is up 1-0 in the season series against the Atlanta FaZe. This came by the way of a 3-0 sweep. This was during the Major 2 qualifiers during the second week, and this is sort of when the Minnesota Rockers started to turn it on, find their identity, find their footing, and really close out the Major 2 qualifying cycle really strongly. I'm going to take the Atlanta FaZe in this one 3-1. I think that, this is very strong placement for Minnesota. I think they should be pretty happy. I think this is right around where they should expect to finish, sort of just below that tier of the top 4 teams that we've talked about before, sort of looking like NYSL, Atlanta FaZe, Toronto Ultra, and Optic. They're in the 4 spot, so sort of just below that. I think a top 6 range is pretty respectable for them, but I think that this is really when the Atlanta FaZe start to lock it in. It's late in the weekend. They know what to expect from themselves. They know how to prepare. So I'll take the Atlanta FaZe in a 3-1 fashion. Now, to round out our Saturday and the rest of our losers 3 matchups, we have the NYSL going up against the Los Angeles Guerrillas. Again, I'll keep this one kind of short and sweet. I like NYSL taking this one 3-1. I think there's a good chance that LAG is able to take a respawn. Not sure exactly what it may end up being. I think that the Major 2 tournament is a time where we're going to see some teams play maps that they've really been grinding, whether it be throughout the Major 2 qualifying cycle or whether it be in scrims or practices, watching VOD. I think that NYSL is, really going to command the 3 maps that they win. NYSL did beat them during Stage 1, but obviously outside of the spawns, LAG has come a long way since that point. Adding in their guys, I just think that they're just going to end up falling short here. I mean, NYSL has really looked like the best team in the league, and I think that they're going to be able to get this one done and advance on out of losers round 3. And here we are. Just like that, we find ourselves on Championship Sunday, where we have winners final, we have losers round 4, we have losers final, and ultimately the grand final, which will be on at around 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully we don't run into any troubles throughout the first weekend. Obviously, it's Boston's first time hosting a major tournament. They'll just knock on wood there that everything runs really smoothly. But starting off this fantastic Sunday, we have Optic Texas going up against the Toronto Ultra. Now, these teams are tied 1-1 on the season series. One of these is relevant, one is not, and only for the purpose of one, which is Toronto's victory, which happened in Major 1 qualifiers, and we have Optic Texas, who got their win during the Major 2 qualifiers during the second weekend. Optic won this matchup 3-1, really made a statement to everybody that this new roster they have is going to be able to gel. They're going to be able to play well together, and I think it's going to be pretty similar to that. I have Optic Texas winning this one in a 3-2 fashion. I think that their search and destroy has looked very strong. I think that as you get deeper into the tournament, especially the more matchups that you end up playing, I think that Optic should be able to get into a good rhythm. I think as well with Toronto, again, an incredibly strong team, which is why I have it going down to Optic with a 3-2 win. Just something about Optic in the majors. Something about Scump being there, obviously watching his team for the first time. I think these guys click. I think they can do it in this series, and I'm going to take Optic Texas in a 3-2 win in the winners finals to have them advance to the grand finals. Now, following up this banger, we have another banger. We have the Atlanta FaZe going up against the New York SUBLINERS. Now, again, these teams also have a 1-1 split in terms of the season series. And again, sort of similar situation as Optic and FaZe. NYSL had their win during the Major 1 tournament, and the Atlanta FaZe actually this past major qualifying cycle during the second week were able to Nysl the New York SUBLINERS. That is winning the search, the control in map 3, and winning the search in map 5. Not traditionally a way that the Atlanta FaZe wouldn't say like to win. I'm not sure if anybody likes to win by Nysl, and it sort of feels like a little bit of a cheap win without having, won a hard point, but I think that Atlanta FaZe just keeps rolling. It's tough to send out NYSL here. They do end up getting a top 4 placement, but it's just something about FaZe, man. I think that they're playing well. I think that Simp is sort of coming around. He's been a little bit of flash in the pan over the past 2 years. He's played well, but really not like Cold War Simp. We've seen that aBeZy has been playing incredibly well in the search and destroy. I think that this may be an area where they might be able to take NYSL on. I'll take the Atlanta FaZe in a 3-1 duel. Now, as we sort of get down to it here, we have the losers final which will be between the Toronto Ultra and the Atlanta FaZe. These two teams have played each other twice. And again, sort of like we talked about, this is going to be a rematch. I think the Atlanta FaZe are going to get them in this one. I think that, like I was saying before, they're going to be absolutely rolling. I think FaZe will have a little bit of an edge. Toronto playing earlier in the day against Optic Texas in a 3-2 fashion. I think that may be a tough one to bounce back from. The Atlanta FaZe will have just played and in theory have defeated the New York SUBLINERS, who a lot of people regard as the best team in the league. And I think that FaZe are just going to stay hot. They're going to stay locked in. They're going to be able to take this one in a 3-1 fashion. Now getting down to the big grand finals. Obviously, you would think this is the NFL, the way that I scripted this thing up. But in the grand finals, we have Optic Texas going up against the Atlanta FaZe. For the grand finals format, it'll be a little different than the rest of the best of 5 series. This will be a best of 7 series. So a change from last year. If you didn't tune into Major 1, they changed the grand finals format from a best of 9 to a best of 7. I really like this format a lot better. I think that it plays out a little bit better, and I think that you see, more dynamic games. Feels a little bit drawn out when you sort of go a best of 9. Sort of leaves the door open a little too far, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm all about, that massive, opportunity for a team to try and come back like the Minnesota Rocker last year. Reverse sweeping, winning those 5 rounds, or those 5 maps in a row. Absolutely crazy, but at the same time, I think that's a little bit of crazy business. So I do like the best of 7. Optic Texas, again, they just played the Atlanta FaZe in the last week of the qualifying cycle. The Optic Texas boys were able to reverse sweep. Didn't look incredibly strong in the first 2 maps. They did look good, but sort of not to a level where I think they should have expected to win. They turn it on in the middle of the control. Dashy just absolutely starts flipping the burgers. He drops 40 in the hard point, and then Shotzi really takes over in that Game 5 search. I think that, although throughout this entire run, I keep saying that FaZe will be really locked in and keep grinding, at this point, this will be the Atlanta FaZe's 3rd series in a row. I think they're going to run out of gas. I think that Optic is going to have a great opportunity to watch the last 2 series, obviously outside of warming up and scrimmaging. I think that overall they're going to have a good idea of what they're looking to accomplish in this series. I think that at this point, the Atlanta FaZe will sort of exhaust a lot of the bullets in the chamber, whether they're trying to hide maps that they've been working on, things like that. They're going to have played a lot of series up to this point. So obviously, in a shocker, I have Optic Texas winning the Major 2 tournament in a 4-2 fashion. They honor the king. They win on his behalf. They don't win because of a result of him. Obviously, Aches keeps, bringing up the narrative that Scump was the problem. Scump was never the problem. I think that overall, he obviously just wants the team to exceed. I think that, the team is in an incredibly good spot right now. I think that, they're really meshing. Obviously, it's a honeymoon period, the first couple weeks playing together, but I really like their chances. Obviously, staying pretty hot in the Major 2 qualifiers with the 4-1 start. Just got to tip it to them, man. So I really just think that they're going to be able to get this thing done. Like I mentioned, in a 4-2 fashion, they'll lift up the Major 2 trophy as champions. So what we'll do is we will go through the bracket really quick and sort of just review everything for you guys from the top and just show you guys, visually sort of where I'm going with the bracket and what it's going to end up looking like. So from the top going down, we have Optic winning 3-2 over the LAT, over the Thieves. We have the New York Subliners with a 3-0 over the Rocker. We have the Toronto Ultra with a 3-2 over the Los Angeles Gorillas. And the Atlanta FaZe winning that one 3-0 over the Boston Breach. Again, going up to the top, we have Optic taking down the New York Subliners in a 3-2 fashion, as well as the Toronto Ultra edging out FaZe in a 3-2 fashion as well. Moving on to winners round 2, I have Optic, again, like I had mentioned, taking on the Subliners, so they will advance, as well as the Toronto Ultra. I have the Optic Texas boys winning 3-2 over the Toronto Ultra to ultimately advance to the grand finals. As we flip down to the losers bracket, this is when we start getting interesting, like I mentioned, so I'll just fire these off for you guys. I have LAT winning 3-1 over the Florida Mutineers. I have the Minnesota Rocker winning 3-1 over the London Royal Ravens. As we continue on, I have LAG beating the Vegas Legion 3-0, as well as the Boston Breach getting their win at home and defeating the Seattle Surge 3-2. In the elimination round 2, I have the Minnesota Rocker beating LAT 3-2, as well as I have the boys of LAG winning 3-1 over the Boston Breach. In elimination round 3, we have the Atlanta FaZe beating the Minnesota Rocker 3-1. Then the New York Subliners defeating the Los Angeles Gorillas 3-1. Where in elimination round 4, we have the Atlanta FaZe edging out the New York Subliners in a 3-2 fashion. And as we get down to it, again, in the elimination final, we have the Atlanta FaZe being able to edge out the Toronto Ultra in a grudge match rematch from winners and advancing on to the grand final, where we have Optic Texas winning in a 4-2 fashion over the Atlanta FaZe. I think that it's going to be an incredible weekend for Optic. Obviously, speaking from an Optic fan, this is a little optimistic of me, but I think that they have the potential to be able to get this thing done. I think that the boys are coming around at the right time. I love to see all the guys happy and meshing together. Dashy is really coming into his own in terms of his role with the team. I think that obviously Kyler and Hook and Illy, the XEO trio, have always sort of had that timing in that relationship, but I think adding in Brandon into that dynamic has really just been incredible over the past couple of weeks. And why not ride the hot hand? I mean, looking back, 4-1, they beat 4, pretty good teams, and they lost to one of the worst teams. But again, didn't watch, so it didn't count. Gonna have to chalk that one up to a fluke. The Search and Destroys looked really good. I think that they're gonna ride that throughout the tournament. Like I'd mentioned, a lot of 3-2 wins, but I think the boys are ultimately gonna be able to get it done and take this victory. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. Who do you guys have winning this Major 2 tournament? You guys can tell me why it's Optic. You guys can also tell me why it might be Optic. Obviously, just kidding. Let me know in the comments, though, who you guys are pulling for, what you think is going to happen, and what you guys think of my bracket overall. I think I have a couple of upsets, but I think that the top half of the teams right now in the season are playing really well. So I think as we get on to Saturday and Sunday, we start to see less upsets, and we start to see those big boys end up on top. But, again, let me know in the comments down below if you guys really enjoyed this video or found it informative or anything of that nature. Please feel free to drop a like. If you guys haven't subscribed already, please feel free to do so. Really enjoyed covering the league so far for you guys, and look forward to doing it for you again more in the future. But for now, that's going to do it for this video, guys. This has been your boy Frankie Bones, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Peace out.